Okay, so let's talk about some phenomena of bilingualism. The first one we'll talk about is interlanguage. And basically, this is a rule-governed linguistic system, but it doesn't have the same characteristics as the target system or the first language. It's made up of basically developmental errors and errors in transfer. So basically what happens is that when a student is learning another language, a second language, they're coming to the task already having a foundation in a first language. And so they have rules and sort of grammatical awareness that they've already developed in that first language. And many times in the process of learning the second language, they're going to try and apply those rules. And what ends up happening is that you get a system that comes out that doesn't look like the first language or the second language and doesn't work the same way either, but it still represents sort of a systematic application of grammar in the process of trying to get in trying to learn the second language and use the grammar of the second language correctly. So you'll see that it is systematic and rule governed. And the errors that are made are developmental. So, for example, phonologically, a student might delete consonants and add vowels between consonants. So something like play would sound like pele, right? Pele, as they put a vowel in between the P and the L. Or they might take the L out altogether and say pay. And the reason they're probably doing that is because the sounds p and l don't come together. Are not a constituent in their first language. There's also examples of lexical developmental errors. For example, the use of gap words. So a child might say something like, I do a truck, and use the verb do, which is sort of very general and can be applied in many places, rather than the more specific term, I draw a truck. Morphemically, we see either deletion of morphemes or substitution of one morpheme for another. And this is discussed in your reading between the difference between errors of commission and errors of omission. So, for example, an error of omission would be to leave out the appropriate morpheme or the suffix, for example. So let's say he's supposed to say, he likes carrot. They would say, he like carrot. And so that's an error of omission. The commission error would be adding a morpheme or a suffix inappropriately. Sort of, is unnecessarily, one could say. So, for example, I runned away. Obviously, we know that the past tense of run is ran. It doesn't take that suffix, that inflectional suffix. But if a child were to say, I runned away, because they're adding that ed suffix, that is an error of commission. And then you see other transfer errors, which is basically, again, relying on the grammar from the first language and trying to apply it to the second language to see if it works the same way. This is a completely normal process. It's actually really, really beneficial. It shows you, as the teacher, the processing of information that the child and student is going through. It also is definitely helping the child to be more metalinguistically aware. And it is a needed step in order for the child to acquire the rules of the second language and to be able to apply them correctly. Okay, another phenomenon of bilingualism is code switching. And this is the systematic alternate use of two languages. This is completely a normal process, a natural sort of phenomenon that happens with bilingual people in general. And usually bilingual people are going to code switch from one language to another with other bilinguals who they know speak those two languages. In the research, code switching is discussed as either intra-utterance or inter-utterance, meaning that intra within one phrase, inter meaning between sentences. And you can see some examples here. We can see, alguien se murió en ese cuarto that he sleeps in. And so the fact that within the same sentence we switch from Spanish to English, that would be an intra-utterance code switch. And then, I'll be back, vado a comprare un paio di cose. The difference there is between two sentences. I'd like to show you a clip of a student, actually two children, in different multilingual situations to showcase to you how code switching might look, and also to sort of drive home to you that it is a completely normal and natural process. Actually, the clip is right here, so...
Amélie, tu aimes les pâtes?
Oui.
Elles sont bonnes?
Oui.
D'accord. Et quel âge as-tu?
Et ça, comment c'est un tapot?
Tu as 5 ans?
Ça, comment c'est un tapot?
D'accord. Comment ça y est? D'accord.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Delicious?
Yeah.
What is it?
Spaghetti. Spaghetti.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
Do you want some more?
Yeah.
You only...
Amélie, ¿vamos a dormir?
No.
¿Por qué no? Ya es hora de dormir.
Yo te comí
¿estás
me
comiendo?
guardas de poco. ¿Qué más?
¿Quieres más?
Me guardas sí.
Tu veux un peu plus?
Oui.
De quoi?
De spaghetti.
De spaghetti? Tu veux un peu plus?
Oui.
D'accord.
So here you see the girls, this little child, switching between Spanish, English, and French. Notice how she switches based on what language the parent is prompting her in. And also that it's strategic. She responds in the way that others are addressing her. Here's another multilingual situation.
Apa yang rusak, Jo?
This one. That one.
Kenapa? Oh, celananya bolong. Kok bisa bolong?
Aku dah tahu kenapa bolong.
Kenapa bolong? Kenapa
Ok.
papa bolong?
Fixe it then. Tiens, prépare.
Je peux pas.
Comment ça tu ne peux pas?
There's no more there.
Tiens, c'est pour toi.
Kalau gitu celananya mau diapain, Jo? Dibuang?
Après, puis dans la poubelle.
Mau taruh di tempat sampah?
No, non.
Belum taruh tempat
Ou
sampah.
alors on laisse Louise le réparer. Tiens, Louise va enfiler le pantalon. Tu lui tiens le pantalon, elle va l'enfiler.
Okay. And this would happen in situations where one parent speaks one language, another parent speaks another language, and they might hear a third language out in the community or be supported in that third language in the classroom, in a school. But basically, as long as the child is provided with opportunity to speak the language, to hear the language, to interact with others, and has enough exposure in each, sort of to build a good foundation, you're going to get a situation where the child can code switch and can switch between the languages and is building a pretty good proficiency in each of the languages. Okay, some of the purposes of code switching, just to list a few. Again, remember it's systematic, it's rule governed. Actually, when a child is code switching, they're showing a lot of knowledge about language, because the words that they choose to switch out and use in another language are actually the same part of speech as the words that were originally there. They're also showing syntactical knowledge because they understand the order in which the words should go, even when they substitute in another language. And they're using code switching for a particular reason. So, for example, maybe they have momentarily forgotten a word, or they might not know the word in that language. So they know that they have the knowledge in another language, and so substitute that. They could do it purposely to try and clarify a message or reinforce a message. They could also be doing it to show that they're on the same page as the other person who switched, right? So that they're meeting them sort of in the language that the person has prompted them in. And also to express ideas that may be difficult to translate or may not exist in another culture. And the other thing I want to talk to you about is translation, which is an ability that some bilingual people can do, especially if they've been put into the situation of having to translate time and time again, because it's a skill, it's something that you have to practice in order to sort of refine. But spontaneous translation is very different to translating as we would think in, for example, the embassy, where there are many people that have been trained and have learned the specific terminology connected to their career in order to translate documents and and things for business purposes or legal purposes.